So now we have entered into the sixth wave. And we saw that they think in a radically new way. Many other companies in the world struggle because there is so much bureaucracy, so much stuff that you need to be doing. And with these two principles, they were able to allow people to be innovative and creative, focus on futures. Hi, I'm Markku Wilenius, and now I'm going to talk to you about my care model. The care model was the model that I worked together with my colleague Sophie Kurki, where we were looking for the type of the organizations that would follow the wave principle. What I mean the wave principle is that over my studies, I have seen that how the societies move from one way to another is these 40 to 60 year old long waves, each of which particular waves have some particular technologies, have particular economies, have particularly social and even political model, and some cultural values that are brought within those waves. And those waves started some 200 years ago, so now we have entered into the sixth wave. So the way that we looked at that was that what are those type of the key properties in this upcoming sixth wave, which is supposedly stretching until 2050. What is the kind of a care model of that era where the companies and organizations of all kinds can draw their lessons, what they need to be learning, how they need to be improving within the organization. The first principle that we found out was something where we say that the organizations, the way that they collaborate, the way they use information, build communication, and cross with those communication models over the borders, inside the organization as well as to external stakeholders. Now, we saw, for instance, the type of the models that some of the companies have created when they started to build relationship with their clients. They can, for instance, go and actually put a little office into this client company to make sure that there is a sufficient amount of communication happening when they are producing some service or some product for their clients. And we saw that they think in a radically new way. They think not in the industrial way where you are clearly defining standard products and you reproduce that product and you sell it to different clients. Now, each product in this type of the model is a unique product that is specifically created for this particular client. And the collaboration between the service provider and the client is the key. The amount of the quality in terms of how the information about the needs of the customer flows into the product and the services of the service provider is then the critical thing. And if you do it in a real good way, at the end of that journey you have a very happy client, but you also have a very happy service provider who knows that he's done the best that they can for that client. And all in all, it is actually creating almost like an immediate ecosystem for that specific purpose. The second part of this care model, it's to rethink the key competencies that is needed in this ecosystem, including the service provider and the customer, and indeed the society and the people in that society. So traditionally, we were thinking that it is enough if people have certain professional competencies when they come to work for a particular organization. But these six-wave organizations, they look really carefully what type of the cultural fit there, because they realize that the most important asset that the company can have is that the people inside there have a high trust to each other. So there is a trust that kind of glues them together, and then they want to extend that trust also into their clients. For doing that in a very good way, you really need to have a very open way of sharing the information inside the company, and that people are tuned to a particular culture, the culture of sharing, the culture of openness, the culture of transparency. And with that type of the culture, it is then much easier also to gain new professional expertises, since the most important part, namely the cultural fit, is there. And build on that as you move on, and you need to have a different skills and competencies to deal with the issues of how to deal with the customer and how to deliver the best products for them. But this doesn't work unless you first think that how your home ground is built, and for that you need the right type of the culture, right type of the atmosphere, and indeed right type of the people. The third element of the care model is inclusive and continuous focus on innovation. Now, what does that mean? That means that we create a type of atmosphere which respect the new ideas and the creativity inside the culture. For instance, we were looking at one company in the US which name is the Morningstar, and they have built their culture inside the organization on two basic principles. The first one was that nobody, even the CEO of the company, does not have any coercive power over the people. The second principle was that everybody has to keep their commitments. And with these two principles, they were able to allow people to be innovative and creative, but at the same time, be very conscious and aware of their responsibilities and commitments. And I have seen that over the time and again, the companies that allow people to focus on their work is fundamentally important. We also look for another company which is called Buurtzorg, a phenomenal company in Netherlands who is in the business of nursing. And they had reinvented the model how the nurses can focus on their work, and everything else around it is taken care of by somebody else. So they can just focus, they don't have to do bureaucracies, they don't have to fill the blankets, they just can focus on doing the nursing. And that unleashed tremendous amount of productivity in the organizations once people are entitled to focus on their time, what they know the best. Again, something which many other companies in the world struggle, because there is so much bureaucracy, so much stuff that you need to be doing, which is actually not why you are in the organization. So this continuous focus on innovation really means that we need to create the conditions for people to be able to innovate, to do their work as they see best fit. And then there are others who take care of the environment, of the other factors that enables this core function to operate. The fourth element of the care model is the passion for radical solutions. Again, if you look at those companies that become pioneering into something, you often see that these are indeed the companies that take this bold step move from one way of doing things to another way of doing things, are not afraid of the changes, but rather embrace the changes when they see fit and there is a clear purpose for that. And it so happens that those most innovative, radical, interesting solutions comes from rather small and nimble companies. It doesn't have to be that way, but most likely it is usually that way. And that's because there is a kind of an internal flexibility. There is a kind of a green light also for the radical solutions. So it's very important to create, again, this kind of a spirit that allows these radical solutions to appear, and that people are sort of licensed to bring them up and test them. So it's kind of also a life of an organization that wants to experiment, kind of probes things, and then out of that probing, something radical, innovative may come at any time. But it's also that only when you see something like a gem coming out and shining, you know that you have already done a long way before that. So the kind of the grassroots is so important there, that we allow different types of flowers to grow in that field, and then we are ready for the surprises, for new radical solutions. The fifth element of the care model is the commitment to long-term thinking. Now, what does it take from the organization to live for 200 years? There was one company that we were investigating called Reactor, which is a Finnish software company. And we saw that they have stated out and loud that we want to be alive still 200 years after. But they also realized that if they have such a long-term goal, the only way to actually to survive that next 200 years and flourish with that is to continuously innovate yourself, rethink who you are, who are your clients, are your products the best now, what are you going to offer them tomorrow, how the world is changing, how what world is changing is affecting to us. So having the long-term goals actually requires that we see ourselves as a part of this continuous flux, this continuous change, and we thrive on that. And with that type of the attitude, we can actually build a very different type of the organization that has understood that the problem is not that we are making mistakes. The problem is if we are not learning fast from our mistakes and sometimes killing our darlings and find something better if there is one thing that doesn't work, and don't just go and continue to push the same sort of thing out of the organization. So the important thing is here that we get this kind of routine where the routine is that we have no routine in the way that we are doing things, but that we are kind of critically looking at that, and there are no taboos inside the organization. So only by this way that we are actually fast reinventing ourselves, we are able to change at the rate which is required in our very fast developing world. The sixth element of the care model is the ability to take risks. Now, if the organization gets very risk aversive, it means that it doesn't allow its people to stretch beyond the obvious. And there start to be all kinds of checkups and controls to prevent people from taking risks. The sixth wave, as an era stretching from 2010 to 2050, is an era where we are taking consciously risks. Consciously meaning that we are aware of the risks that we are taking, but we are still taking them, because we see that that is the way that we can actually build something that builds the kind of a uniqueness of ourselves, that recreates the uniqueness that we need. Because as we are moving forward, it's not about becoming a perfect of anything. The seventh and the last element of the care model is very simple. Focus on futures. And for many companies and organizations, it really means that we need to get rid of the fact that we are mostly organizing ourselves based on the information and the static data that comes from the past. In fact, the best organizations are not necessarily those ones that are driven by ambitious targets that are measured year after year after year. The best companies are not actually defined by their targets, but by the principles on which they are working. And what are those principles? So coming back. But the best companies are those ones that are building their operations on principles on which they are operating. And there are two principles among others. The first one is that, yes, rather than targets, we have principles, like the one that let's not use any coercive power over the other, so basically the organization is flat, the best argument wins. And the second, which is that everybody does its commitments. But the way that the best companies operate is that they actually let them organize themselves. The organization is like amoeba, going from one to another, flexing here and there as it sees fit, and based on what it senses, how the environment in which it operates is changing. This is radically new way of looking at that. But again, to the idea of the element itself, which is that focus on future, this allows the company builds on the future rather than building itself on the past performances, on the past way of looking at things, on the past data. Because only by focusing on the future, you will get something different. So, this 7 element of the care model is really focus on the future, does it in a way that allow organization to flourish, which means that you build it on principles, not necessarily on targets, And secondly, that you take the people along with you and you help the co-workers of the companies to test the new ideas, and then if it turns out to be a good one, then you deploy that idea on the organizational level. Thereby you enable the whole organization to adapt to something new that has been invented inside the company, and that's how we are using the power of the future in our organization.